Right, okay. So, hi everybody. I know we're all in different time zones, so it's good evening from here. I know it's afternoon in some parts and it's morning in others. So pleased so many of you have wanted to join in this session. As we say, it's a question and answer session. So first of all, I must say I don't have the answer to everything. There may be the odd question. I'll say I don't have an answer or opinion on that particular question topic. So I will be, straightforward and honest with you. When I answer your questions, some of my answers will come from experience, and that's the way I prefer to answer as many of the questions as I can. I think there's nothing better than actual experience. Other questions I'll answer are maybe my understanding from what I learned from some of the great teachers from my earlier days, such as Gordon Higginson, who was a friend, and also I spent a lot of time sharing with him sharing his knowledge and understanding, and also my training with him. Other things, other questions, maybe I might say I don't have a definite answer. This may be a possibility, but each of us, our own philosophy is just our own understanding and experience at this particular time. We should always be moving and changing. So, don't be scared to ask your questions. I'll do the best I can for you in my understanding and knowledge that I have, which is, over 30 years within spiritualism, and also looking at one or two other teachings from other places, other cultures, and some of the older religions as well, because I believe there's a lot of truth that is the foundation within all religions. So the questions can be on the philosophical aspect as I look at it as a medium, and also your questions on mediumistic development, or communication about the spirit world and what takes place from their side and our side, and also even maybe questions about the spirit world itself. Or some of you may have, I hope not, too many fears or doubts about the spirit world. I know sometimes some people's minds dwell on the negativity aspect of it, which I'm not a great believer of. So feel free to ask your questions. We'll ask you to put your hands up if you want to ask a question. No question is silly. If it's a question you want to put out there, then please feel free to do so, and I'll do my best for you. We'll try to get through as many of you as we can. So we can't have one individual hogging all the questions. We want to give everybody a fair chance. So if you've asked a question, then give other people an opportunity first. Maybe we can come back to you for another one, depending on the amount of questions that come forward from you all. So is there anybody who would like to get the ball rolling?
We have a question on the chat, and they said, how do you see this global event impacting our pathways with mediumship and the deeper connection to the spirit world? And that's by Mark. Mark, come off mute.
Okay, I said to you earlier before we start, we could guarantee the question of what's happening in the world today with the virus is going to come up. And firstly, I must say, I've had no communication or answer from the spirit world. But if I look at the teachings from the spirit, from the past, but also the teachings I've understood, most people who call themselves spiritualists and even from other religions will understand there is a natural law that governs creation that nobody can break. And I believe very much if that law is disturbed by our creating, then that causes disharmony and in turn disease until that harmony is and balance is restored within natural law. And I wrote in my book quite a number of years ago, before the financial crash, many years before the financial crash in 2008, when I sat for the spirit world with a group of friends, and they'd asked me, what did the new millennium mean? And the spirit world spoke about the new millennium is the new spiritual age, and that It's the end of the materialistic age, and unless man turns back to the reality of the spirit and start living that reality and the balance of the spirit within this physical world, then we will see loss and destruction of the physical world until man turns back to spirit. They said, and this was in 1999, the year 2000, that they spoke this, and I wrote, and they said we would see the collapse of financial institutions, the collapse of worldwide conglomerate businesses, and also certain religions across the world would also collapse. And we've seen this happen over the last 10 years. And they said if man does not learn his lesson, then these things that seem to destroy many aspects of the physical world will continue to happen. That may sound negative. Let me stress, it's not the spirit world deliberately making these things happen. The same with the virus. I don't believe it's an individual God or a supreme mind that is punishing us for making these things happen. But unfortunately for mankind, womankind, we only seem to learn and grow through negative experiences that affect this physical world. There's no need for such to happen. But if you look often, I know in my own life as an individual, it has been in my crises when I've reached breaking point with my physical self and physical world. There's those times that the only thing I have left to turn to is God. And that's what brought my awakening to the spirit, because I was at breaking point. And often it's when we've reached that breaking point, it brings an awakening, because all we've got left to turn to is God. And to be able to awaken, touch that God point within us, that will invoke that power, that divine power of life and creation, that power of God that we are, and collectively bring that change about. And in a way, this is what will happen, and hopefully the lesson we'll learn through this difficult time we're all facing with the virus that's affecting every nation within the world. The spirit world also gave me a vision, and actually the vision came from Gordon Higginson, and he showed me a night as the Crusaders, the spiritual Crusaders, and he said to me in the vision that the spirit world is gathering an army, but also an army needs to be gathered here on the earth to face and deal with what comes to the earth, and that's what we need to do to help the people of this earth and this planet. So very much the spirit world are going to need many of us to play our part, whether it's those who are going to be touched by grief or bringing that awakening and the knowledge of the reality of the eternal spirit. So unfortunately, we are going to be affected in this way as little as possible. We pray and hope, but we do have to keep learning and growing and start to learn in the natural law and order of the universe, because otherwise disharmony will continue to take place in one form or another. The only God blessing we've got as individuals who join in today, we've got this knowledge and understanding that there's more to this world than our life and existence of the physical, that we know and understand that there's eternity, that the soul and the spirit is real and lives for eternity in its expression. And, that will hopefully give us the strength to be able to see us through this, but also if we can get that message across to the outside world, that will help them have a strength and also begin to live and look at their own power of the spirit and relationship, what we call God, and how it can manifest and bring a difference in our own lives as individuals, bring the lives of the world in the world who we touch, so we can bring that harmony, that balance, peace and well-being to all peoples and all nations. I hope that best I can answer your question, Mark. Anybody else like to ask another question?
Yeah, he said it makes sense. Thank you, Paul. Be
Okay.
safe and stay healthy.
Anybody like to answer a question? Put your hand up.
Someone else asked a question in the chat.
Mike. Mike? Put your mic on. How's it, Mike? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, hi, Paul. I have a question about with mediumship. So, I know that this is my calling and my passion in life, and I'm not currently at a point in my life where I'm meeting like financial needs, and the doing readings right now is not bringing me like a full-time income. So I like feel this guilt, I guess, that if I'm not committing fully to my development and doing readings, that I'm not doing enough. So I've struggled with this back and forth, and I was wondering if you have any sort of insight on that.
That's a biggie, Mike, and I'm sure many those who have joined today who are wanting to work for the Spirit full time as the medium would be interested in this answer one. Unfortunately, I haven't got a magic wand for that, Mike. I can only some of my answers you might not like, okay, some of you, but this is how we have to look at it. You know, if we go to the past, say, such as Gordon Higginson, who was the finest medium of his day, yeah, he demonstrated in every major hall and theatre in the country. Every penny went to save the Spiritual National Union movement from going bankrupt. He never earned any money out of his mediumship. He had a small grocery shop which provided his income, and his work for the Spirit was free. I remember when I got to a stage where I was in a full-time job and also working as a medium, it got to the stage where the demand for my mediumship was becoming greater and greater, and having difficulty balancing an everyday job and doing the work for the Spirit. And I kept saying to the Spirit world, am I supposed to become a full-time medium? No, asking and asking and asking, no answer to it at all. So I decided to book a sitting with a reputable medium to see if the medium could give me the answer whether I should be a full-time medium. And can everybody check they've got the mics off? Yeah, okay. Except for you, Mike. So I booked this private sitting, and he gave me good evidence from my grandfather in the spirit world. And then right at the end of the sitting, because the medium didn't know why I'd gone for, or the reason what I was wanting answering. And right at the end of the reading, he said, Paul, the spirit world is saying it is your decision, it is your choice whether you become a medium full-time or not. And I thought, oh no, that's not the answer I want. I want them to tell me whether I should or I shouldn't. But then he added, he said, they do say if you decide to make it your full-time work, they will always make sure there's enough work to provide for your physical needs. Which they did, but for a number of years it was a struggle to do so. I had holes in the bottom of my shoes. If it wasn't for my family helping and supporting me, I wouldn't have managed to be able to do so. So for quite a number of, I remember a very wealthy member of the church giving me an overcoat, and I said, why have you bought me that? He says, you need a new coat. I said, I can't possibly accept. And he said, we used to do it for Gordon Higginson, so if we could do it for him, we can do it for you. So to be honest with you, the spirit world will not tell you whether you should be or not. And then it's our own decision. And you've got to realise whether you work one day for the spirit a week or whether you work 7 days a week for the spirit world, you are no lesser or greater than the other in your service to the spirit world. And the spirit world do not expect you to neglect those needs of your physical world. And I'll be honest with you, if we look in the past at the time period I came into this, which was in the mid-80s, most of the mediums of that day didn't really earn much of an income. They were after either ladies who were already married, men who hadn't got families that they'd got to provide for, or ladies who maybe were on pensions or widows. Please don't even get me wrong. It is my living. Yes, it is my full-time work. You can say it's a career. You can say it's a business as well, which it is to a certain degree. So I've got no qualms anybody earning to provide for their physical needs, but it's a big choice, and I think we've got to accept, and this might be difficult, that it's not meant, and I'm not saying you particularly, Mike, okay, all right, it is not meant that we all come full-time mediums, even though it may be our heart's desire to be. It's not always meant to be so. And please don't think I'm being with this lady's offensive. But Gordon Higginson often used to tell the young ladies who used to come to him, who were wanting to do this path, he used to say to them, go away and have your family and then come back later. Because the spirit world don't, because we live in both worlds, we can't neglect the physical. So if it is your heart's desire, Mike, it is going to be a struggle to do, you know. I don't believe that we should, even though I struggled for many years, but I've got to admit, most of my work in the early years was for the churches, which didn't really pay anything, but it gave me my experience and, in a way, built a reputation of the quality of my work, which then I actually found. I had my first invite to work into another country. How they knew of me, I haven't a clue. You know, and I found it just naturally led that way. And I often say to people who come to me, especially some of the younger ones who want to do this full time or eager to pack the jobs in, I always say to them, don't go from day one from doing your normal day job to doing this full time. I wouldn't advise anybody to do that. I said you're better off to trying to do normal day job and try to create a certain amount of time for this work and then allow it to naturally build and take over to maybe then you're in a position to then make it your full-time work, Mike.
Okay.
All right. You know, I know it's not the answer maybe everybody wants to hear, but that's the truth. And, you know, I know what it's like to struggle through this. And for many of you do. Okay. And the spirit will don't expect us to make that sacrifice. You know, I've been fortunate. You know, work comes, work goes, but I can honestly, hand on my heart, say, you know, today, yes, we all use the social media where we do advertising. I understand that, but what I don't understand, before social media, the work still came. I was still full with my work, you know. So I'm not saying we shouldn't use social media. I do myself. But I really think that it should naturally unfold. I think today, though, and we're all as guilty for it, that we want everything yesterday. You know, we've got that and it's only maybe you've got the right desire, the eagerness, the keenness, but it's also got to be the right time for us in our life to make it our full-time work. You know, I mean, some of you have already probably experienced, you know, like say for myself, my life has to be booked away 2 years in advance. I don't know what I'm going to feel like in 2 years, but I've got to honour that commitment. You know, you've got family you neglect. You're not there for family celebrations and events that come up. Even when I've not even felt well enough, physically, mentally or emotionally, I've still had to honour my commitment. No time for other interests or hobbies. You know, it definitely becomes your thing. And you know, so it's not an easy life to choose. Especially, I've got a friend now who's a well-known medium, and he came to me when he was 18. And even though he's excellent, I always said to him, full-time mediumship's not meant for you. He's done it, but he'll go by the wayside eventually because it's not meant for him. Because it won't satisfy his intellectual aspect in the other in things he's interested in. I know eventually he wants to buy a home, get married, have children. And I said, even if from your full-time work, I'm not saying you won't be able to earn enough money to provide for that. But then to do so, you're not going to be able to be at home to share with a family and wife, you know. And this is what you've got to look at. So for a time period, you know, without going onto all other religions, or if you want to take Jesus as an example, he gave 3 years service. You know, the spirit will take what we're prepared to give, yeah, and the happy, whatever small, whatever that great is. And I've seen other people too, when they have sacrificed all their material world to do this full time and destroyed their material life, then they blame the spirit world. And I'm sorry, it was your choice, not the spirit world's choice. And that's what we must remember. Again, you know, one of our main principles, personal responsibility. You know, it's like myself. You know, I lost my home and business through the neglect of doing this. That wasn't the spirit world's fault. That was my choice. That was my.
I found that when I do allow myself to do other things like that to bring in income, that my readings are better because I feel like I'm not so like set on an outcome for the reading, you know, like I'm not controlling it and it feels more free flowing.
That's a good point, Mike. I know myself when I went through a particular stage, because when I started doing this full time, I lost my business, I lost my home, I was in debt for a lot of money. So I was taking work I didn't want to do. I was taking work and traveling to places I didn't want to go purely because I needed the money, and my work suffered.
Okay, yeah.
So I would really try to, you know, my advice personally, Mike, to you and to many of you, if I was you, you know, you're a young man, you've got to provide for your physical needs. And, you know, if this stage of your life, you can only do 1 day, 2 day or 3 day to this, the spirit world are more than grateful for that, Mike. And then when the time's right, it may come, then that you can move over to being your full-time work.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. I'll go on to... anybody else like to ask a question? Put your hand up. Okay, Ellen.
Hi, Paul.
Yeah.
Good to see you. Okay, I'm going to try and make this not too complicated.
Good girl. Keep it simple.
I'm trying. Okay. So the thing is, when blending and in a link, I both doing mediumship and in life, holding the balance between the link and blend with spirit and then the functional linear, like here's what I'm hearing, seeing, blah, blah, blah. Like when I go to do the thing with the person, I lose track of the other thing with the spirit world. And that happens, you know, I think on multiple levels, right? In life, in mediumship, it just, so, I mean, obviously, I guess you would automatically say sitting in the power more is one thing you have to do to help you with that. But what else? What are all the things you can think of to do to help? Was that simple? That wasn't simple. I did my best. I'm sorry.
For you, you did well. You did well. Okay. Let me. Okay. I think the biggest thing is being able to multitask. Okay. And I think many still find it difficult to perceive and recognize the concept of being more than one aspect to the mind. So we have our conscious mind, which we live this physical world by, the subconscious mind, and then we have the higher conscious mind, the mind of the spirit, the mind that's within the soul, the mind that survives physical death. And that is the mind we have to use when we're communicating with the spirit world, okay? But then that using that mind and that communication through that higher mind within the soul then has to come through the gateway of the subconscious onto the conscious mind, which we need it to register for us to understand and deliver. But then it's being able to communicate with the conscious mind with your recipients, but being able to communicate with the soul, the mind of the spirit communicator at the same time. And that is the magic key, which most people have difficulty with. So what you should be able to do, as I'm having a conversation with you now with my conscious mind, I should be able to communicate with my higher mind within the soul, with the spirit world at the same time. So when I'm delivering communication, when I'm doing it to the greater perfection, which I don't always, so as I'm communicating to you what I've already received, I'm communicating back with the spirit world, receiving the next information at the same time. So that means I'm not receiving something, stopping communicating with the spirit world while I'm relaying to you, because then that brings me away from the spirit and brings then my conscious mind to the main forefront. The same when you have your clairvoyant visions. The image comes from the mind through the subconscious, using your imagination onto your conscious mind, and then you stay in your conscious mind looking at it, describing your experience of it, which is not going to work. You're not going to understand it correctly. It's being able to, as it registers in your conscious mind, still be conscious of it within your soul and question and understand it and unfold the evidence from that clairvoyance or information from within your soul the same time you're speaking with your conscious mind. Does that help a little bit, Ellen?
Some, yeah. The other part of it, I mean that's things you said in the class. Other
No, just hold on a minute. See, also, which I've said in the class, Ellen, is you see, people sometimes students say to me, "How can you seem to stay communicating within your soul easier than most of us?" I said, because I'm not just doing it when I'm working with my mediumship. I'm conscious and allowing those ingredients with my soul to be open and aware in my everyday life. So it's a natural thing for me to do, not just when I'm working with mediumship. And by that, I don't mean I'm communicating with the spirit world in my soul. What I'm doing, I'm listening to my soul in what I'm doing, in my actions, what I'm sharing it. As I'm speaking to you now, I'm not just listening, which I can hear with my conscious mind. I'm listening to what I'm saying with my emotions and my spirit and my higher mind at the same time. It's always just a natural thing for me to be listening within my soul in whatever I'm saying, whatever I'm doing. And if we all could try and live and do that a little bit more, because it would help us in our own lives to start with, not just in our mediumship, then you would find it easier to stay there within the communication within your soul, rather than moving away from it and making our conscious minds too prominent.
So it's like two different awarenesses at the same time, kind of.
That's the magic key. Okay. All right. So I'm going to move on to another page now, Helen, if that's okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Paul, we actually wanted to ask the question, what do spirits ideally want from us to work with them?
Simply to be of service. And it's really to bring the awakening. I think what we've got to look at, the spirit world don't demand anything of us, okay? All the spirit world wants, actually, and they're not really bothered whether we're mediums or not. God help us if the whole world become mediums, to be truthful. You know, what the spirit wants is people to live the quality of their spirit within their own lives for their own soul to gain in experience and expression. that power and that divine spirit within, but also to use it and to touch to benefit this world as a whole, whether that's people, whether it's the animal kingdom, and whether it's the planet. It's bringing awakening of the reality of the eternal spirit. Yes, we might put our focus as mediums, and it is an important tool, an important part of our work to help people who are grieving, given that communication and evidence that their loved ones have survived. Yes, it's an important part of our work to maybe do readings to help people who are having difficulties living in this physical, material world. Yes, it may be helpful and important to bring that healing touch through that healing power. But our work and message is greater than that. It's about bringing an awakening within the soul of individuals out there who've not had the awakening, but found that reality and understanding of that internal spirit within, but also that something divine that's within, that power of loving power of all life and creation that we're all a part of. And when we can all recognize that and allow it to come alive within us, and that's where our real job of mediums and healers and psychics are, is to be able to touch and bring that awakening in individuals. And I'll be honest with you, and I'm not just speaking about you as mediums, anybody else as a medium, I include myself in this. I sometimes wonder how often we succeed to do that in our mediumship, you know, because when we give a communication, a contact from the spirit world, it's about the spirit touching spirit to bring that awakening. It's not just about their grief, it's finding that reality and allowing them then to take those steps to go forward on their own personal search to find the reality of that spirit within and being part of the spirit of the stupendous soul of all life and creation. And when man has got that, and woman, then we'll find that peace and harmony and balance within this world as we need it. I hope that answers the question, okay? Have they any comeback on that?
Beautiful. All right, Briona has a question. Come off mute.
Okay.
Briona, you there?
I can't. Where's Fiona?
No, Briona. She just messaged. Let's see if she's on.
Which page is Fiona on? Yeah.
Let me find her.
Fiona, can you wave?
Oh, there she is. Yay, she's off mute. Go ahead.
There. I can't see her.
She's on
Page one. Which
third
page?
page. The third
What?
page for me.
Third page.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd just like to see who I'm speaking to.
Fiona, can you talk to make sure we can hear you? We can't.
Where are you, Fiona?
Hi. Oh, let me tell you what her question is because she's unmuted, but we cannot hear her. So let's do it this way.
Okay.
She said, how do you find the confidence to start being open with family and strangers about being a medium and start sharing your gifts with people?
I suppose that's changed over the years. At first, I was excited when I first started discovering about it, wanting to tell everybody, which often then people just wanted to make fun of. So I started being a little bit more quieter about it. I don't believe when I'm out socially, when I start talking to people and ask me what to do, pushing this down people's throats, especially in a social setting. Again, the normal response you get is, oh, well, then prove it to me, you know, or they want to take the mickey out of it. I just take it on my own intuition, whether I bring the subject up of what I do or what I'm not, or in a way, I talk to them in a way, not telling where I am, but it makes them look and question me, not maybe understanding where I am. And quite often I've experienced in my time being out socially, and somebody started talking to me and actually start telling me their problems naturally. And I still don't tell them a medium, but I start giving them answers to things, or giving questions back about what they're sharing with me, and they look at me quite strangely, you know. But I still don't really believe I'm really broadcasting it to and forcing it on to people. If the situation's right and I feel they're a right sort of individual to say it to, then I will. Family accepts me for it. That wasn't a problem. They thought it was a fad I was going through at the time, like anything else I've done in the past. But the fads last 35 years. And really now they really quite accept what I do. And also been quite supportive of it because they know how much it means to me. But I think just use your own discretion with it. I don't like it when people force it on other people. And if I'm challenged by strangers who do know what I do, to prove it to them, and I'll say, I'm not going to do that here and now. I've got nothing to prove. If you want to make appointments, I'm happy for you to come round and see me and we can have a chat and we can see. But I don't believe in forcing it, and I don't believe in trying to go out and convert people in a heavy way. So that's okay.
All right, thank you. All right, you can come off mute. The floor is open for questions. Take advantage. We have the amazing call here that's taking time today.
Anybody else?
No question is a dumb
I thought
question.
you'd all be fighting to ask questions. It's normally the way when we start, and then when
Marie
we
has
start
a
to
question.
close, we can't fit everybody's questions in.
Marie has a question. Go ahead, Marie.
Paul, I have a question. When I've read about the mediums of old, many of them had, I suppose, mental health problems. As we open up more to the spirit world, we obviously become more sensitive to this world as well. So how would you say we can manage that or control that?
Well, well, to be honest with you, Maria, I didn't realise a lot of the old mediums of the past had mental health problems. I didn't know that. So that's a new one. That's a new one to me. I don't think mediumship has any thing to do with their mental effects about well-being. I think I question that maybe as I get a little bit older, when I might be prone to dementia a little bit easier, if you think, because we're doing these mind shifts all the time. But I think the basic stability of my mental health, I don't think my mediumship has an effect on it. I don't think really, Marie, that's...
Well, I don't think dementia would be a problem, Paul, because I think we have to have strong minds to do this, don't we?
Yeah,
Paul,
you have to be strong mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically to do this, yeah.
but there are, I mean, the Fox sisters, they ended, well, was it Kate Fox ended up with drink problems? So this is what I've read and understood.
I don't think it was because of their mediumship as such, Mary. I think it was more maybe the effect and the influence from, you know, what they brought to the public and the effect of they faced from the outside world, more so than the mediumship itself.
The pressure that they had.
I mean, I forget what year it was. The Church of England did a report on mental health. Saying because they, you know, checking to see whether mediumship and spiritualism communication cause mental health problems, and the report says no. If people are doing mediumship or affected by the communication, then they'd already got mental health problems before they came into it.
No, I'm not saying the mediumship caused their mental health, Paul. What I'm saying is that as sensitive people, this is what I'm trying to say, is that as we start to develop our mediumship, we become more sensitive to the spirit world.
Okay, but sorry, it's not how you started your question, Mary. Yes, we've got to be careful with that. You know, we're encouraging everybody to heighten their awareness and their sensitivity. So what we do have to be careful is that we don't become oversensitive and hypersensitive. And I think most of you will experience, and if you look at yourself, selves, I know I've done this, that I found that I started reacting to things positively and negatively that I wouldn't have reacted to in the past before I heightened my sensitivity and awareness. So it's a two-edged sword, really. So this is why there's got to also be this constant self-awareness and understanding. Just a little example. I can remember I was living in Holland at the time, and I'd been to out for a meal on my own, and I was walking back to my apartment, and the more I was walking back home to my apartment, the more depressed I was becoming, and the depression was coming really heavy. And I thought, Paul, pull yourself together. You've got nothing to be depressed about. So I just went within myself and questioned, why am I feeling this? And then the thought of a friend came to mind. So I found this friend who was living in Germany, and I said, I'm just ringing, I'm just seeing if you're okay. Are you depressed at the moment? He says, I'm on the floor, I'm really down, I'm really depressed. So my sensitivity and awareness could pick up that friend's depression, even though I was in another country. But at first, it was as if it was my own depression, right, until I got that realization that it wasn't my own. So this is why there has to be this constant awareness taking place. Yeah. So this is why you'll find that different environments. I can remember the last time I went to a nightclub, my sensitivity couldn't cope with it. I had to leave. I've never been in a nightclub since. I just couldn't cope with it, because you've got to remember, we're sensitive and we're aware to the energy, the places, and the people that are around us. And I very much need my private space and solitude, even from other people, other spiritualists and mediums and spiritual people. I still need my solitude away from, in a way to just be within my own awareness and sensitivity. And that doesn't mean I'm sitting meditating all the time in the formal sense, but just to be with myself and the disturbance of the outside influences because of that heightened sensitivity. So, we've got to try and keep that balance and also not overreact. There are times I do overreact and I go mad at myself for it. And then there are other times I go to overact and I stop myself and I'll say, no, sleep on it, Paul, and then react tomorrow. Because the first reaction and that sensitivity, and we do let things affect us to a greater degree than we should at times. And that's not an easy balance to find and to keep. That's the best I can answer you, Mary. That's okay.
No, that's what I was asking, Paul.
Good. That's right. That's wonderful then. Right, next question.
Beautiful. All right, so we have a couple people lined up. So it'll.
Anybody got anything on mediumship development or the communication?
So it's Anne. It's going to be Anne, Patricia, then Ellen. So Anne, you're up.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can, yes.
Hi, Paul.
Hi.
I am a beginner in mediumship, and I'm still struggling. I'm not quite confident in making the difference between my thoughts and the messages from the spirit world. So how can I improve this confidence, please?
Only through experience, Anna, I'm afraid. Okay. I've been saying more and more to students regular in classes, when we work in, the spirit world, have to use our imagination. It's one of the most important faculties we've got. And also, when I work psychically, there is no difference in the clairvoyant vision and the clairaudient word to what I experience mediumistically and psychically. I do prefer, when I'm working mediumistically, even though I'm a strong clairvoyant, to be able to feel the presence of the communicator. But the only way you're going to know is by expressing and being prepared to be wrong, that it is your imagination, it is psychic, it is your own mind. it is the spirit world. It's the only way. And what I keep saying to students in the classes, you know, one of the things that holds you back more than anything else is because you're scared of being wrong and somebody saying no. It's the thing that holds everybody back. I mean, you know, if I look now, if I look back, we all have certain contacts and evidences that we remember that we felt has really been like something that little bit extra and more. But if I'd have been scared of getting a no and being wrong or being my own mind, I wouldn't have expressed it, and that wonderful communication would have never taken place. So put it to one side. And what makes me smile, especially in the classroom, you've got permission to be wrong. You know, and actually in the classroom, I say to my students, I want you to be wrong. I can teach you more, because there's no medium who is ever going to be 100% accurate. Even the best mediums, whoever you want to class as the best mediums in the world, there will always be a percentage of psychic. There will always be a percentage of their own mind. It will never be 100% pure spirit. And I deny any medium who says it is. It's not possible, because the mediumship has to work through our psychic faculty, which is open. Our imagination and our conscious mind has to come into it as well. So all we can hope to do is do our best to keep it to the smallest percentage as possible. And, you know, I think also sometimes, especially for beginners, I think we're trying so hard to prove we are a medium. We're trying so hard to prove we can do it that actually it stops it happening. But I keep saying to students, you know, especially in the beginning of the journey, just if you're interested, if you want to go on a journey of discovery, then do so. But do it with joy and let the journey unfold and discover what abilities and qualities are there and how you can manifest them, and let the journey unfold instead of trying to force it and make it happen and trying so hard. I even find now, even with myself, even with all my years' experience, if I go to take a demonstration or a sitting and I'm there with the attitude, I've got to be good, I've got to prove myself, I can guarantee I'll struggle. The more I can go in a relaxed state and simply with the attitude, I'm just going to enjoy the moment and the experience, it goes far better. I assure you. Because I think often also a lot of us try to control the communication too much. We try to control how we want to receive it, what we want as evidence, and that's what a lot of people are even teaching. It's time we stopped all that. We've got to put naturalness back first. And when I work with the spirit world, I simply say, I trust, I surrender, bring me whatever you want to bring in whatever way I can receive it. And then I express it. And if it's wrong, it's not the spirit world, so be it. That's what's happened at that particular moment. It's not the end of the world.
Right.
Does that help you a little bit, Anna?
Yes, a lot. Can you just tell me the difference between mediumship and psychic, please?
Okay, all right. In a way, they are part of each other. So the psychic is, in the formal sense, we're talking that my soul is experiencing and aware of the soul of the sitter and the recipient, and I can be able to read the soul and know the soul of the sitter. Mediumistically, it's exactly the same thing, but just swung the other way. It's my soul is blending and experiencing a soul that's left the physical body behind. It exactly works in the same way, and we use exactly the same faculties. So this is why I always say to students when they're practicing on a one-to-one, be careful when you're working with your recipient, again, putting this 100% focus of your conscious mind up front with your sitter, because your psychic faculty is open, because your mediumship works through your psychic faculty. So what will happen is you will start picking information from the soul of your sitter and not so much from your communicator. So when I'm working with a sitting, I only put half the focus, or part, not even half, part of my focus up front to acknowledge the sitter and the recipient and relay, but I put my awareness of the communication and the soul of the spirit world to the side and behind me to make sure I stay there with the spirit person and not drop fully psychically into the sitter's energy. One or two students have asked me recently when I'm demonstrating, they said, Paul, we see you turn and move back away from the audience sometimes in a demonstration. And they said, why do you do that? I say it's because I'm conscious that as I'm relaying and talking to the audience, I'm coming away from the power of the communicator into the energy of the audience. So I'm moving myself back into the power of the spirit and the communicator and away from the energy of the individuals that I'm speaking to. Does that help you?
Yes, very much. Thank you very much, Paul.
My pleasure. Next one, Lilia.
Patricia, you're up.
Hi, Paul.
Hi, Patricia.
Hiya. Paul, I'm continuing a question a girl asked maybe 4 questions back. Is there an exercise or a practice that we can do alone, where, as you said, you're in the conscious, but you're also in the super conscious, so you're not moving in and out, so you can actually stay there and relay the messages that you're getting? Is there an exercise that we can do alone to make that stronger? Or do you have to always practice with people to make that strong?
Well, in one way, yes, you have to practice with people. The only thing you can do is being able to sit on your own and being able to lift your consciousness and power to blend with the spirit world, not an individual, and hold within it. And, you know, if you cannot do that on your own, in like a form of meditation, sitting in the power and that change of consciousness for an hour, then how on earth are you going to do a demonstration for an hour?
Right.
Yeah, because, you know, unless, you know, if you think we're doing a demonstration for an hour, hour and a half, or whatever length, okay, we've got to keep our mind on that other level of consciousness and within that power for that length of time. And most people have difficulty doing it for 30 minutes on their own in a meditation.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you, my training and development, I sat in a group once a week doing purely that, and then every day on my own for roughly about 12 months. And then Gordon Higginson then said to me, you're now ready to begin your training. So in that 12 months, I was not allowed to even do one psychic exercise, let alone try to give a contact from the spirit world.
So, Paul, would you recommend that everybody, I'm just on about myself right now though, that you do sit for an hour every day in that power?
Well, yes, if you can build it to that, that would be great. But in the beginning, which I couldn't when I first began, there's no point sitting there for an hour and just struggling and fighting because you achieve nothing. So the only way is to begin. And if you can only manage 10 minutes to start with, fine. And then as you start to succeed, the time length will naturally grow. So when you do an hour, then you'll find that you only sat for about 2 minutes, 5 minutes. Yeah, that's one of the signs you're achieving. All right. I know there's lots of different types of meditation. There's lots of people like music, but really, if you're going to develop and hold the power and the consciousness we need for it to work with the spirit world, you need the silence and the stillness.
Okay.
So I found that difficult in the beginning. So what I used to do was I just play a little meditation tape for about 10 minutes just to get me in the right frame mind. Then I would go into the silence and the stillness.
Right, Paul. So I done a course with you a couple of weeks ago. Would it be a good idea to follow that meditation that you talked us through, if you remember?
Okay,
thank you.
I definitely would, yeah. Okay,
thank you so much. Cheers.
Thanks. Okay. Right, next one, Lillian.
Ellen, you're next.
Hi, Paul. Hi. So I want to go back to the sensitivity that we carry as mediums. you know, what I've discovered about myself, and I was really having a great time before the virus. I was doing churches and I was feeling great. And what I've discovered about me is that if I'm happy, if I'm in a happy place and I've got joy and I've gone, wow, this is going to be great, it goes well. And the difficulty I'm having right now is, fear is the opposite of mediumship. I can tell you, you know that. If you're not confident, or if you're afraid you're going to die from the virus, or craziness is going on. So I feel a bit shut down, and I feel bad about it. Because I said, well, if I'm truly a spiritual person, if I can truly sit in the power, and I can do the things that you're talking about, or try, you know, have the contact get close and bring them forward and do the excitement of it. Well, why am I being so sensitive to the planet being so crazy?
Because you're not when you're working with your mediumship, then you're not surrendering to the power enough. Because when you surrender to the power fully, then anything that's affecting the physical goes to one side.
Even the fact that people are getting sick all around and all the rest of that?
I find my most difficult moments in my life, whether that's physically, mentally, emotionally, health-wise, I have my best demonstrations.
Because you say, okay, spirit world, you do it.
I surrender. I can, just to give a couple of little examples. I remember I'd got a demonstration, and I was working. It was time when I got a job as well, and I'd been attacked by the customer, and my face was cut. I got blood on my face. Went to the accident at the hospital. Came out. And then realised I've got this demonstration to do. It was only a local demonstration. And I thought, there's no good phoning the booking secretary. They'll have left home for the church. I've got time just to get to the church, and I can see I'm in no state to do it. So I arrived at the church, not changed, blood on my face. And I said, as you can see, I'm not physically fit, mentally or emotionally to do this demonstration. And as wonderful, considering spiritualists, I said, oh, you're sure you can't do it? So I said, okay, I'll try. I sat on the platform in the church, and I said to the spirit world, if this demonstration is going to go ahead, you're going to have to pull out all the stops. And then I actually said, in fact, it is all yours. And it is the best demonstration I've had to this day in my life. And that was 30 years ago. And as I said that, I don't see when I'm demonstrating very often objectively. And a gentleman who works with me from the spirit world, as I said, in fact, it's all yours. I saw him standing clairvoyantly at the back of the church, as clear as day. And wow, what a demonstration.
Oh, wow.
You see, you have to forgive me on this one, Ellen, okay? All right. And it's not for you, it's for everybody and myself, okay? You know, we've got to be careful about the materialistic side of mediumship. When I speak about the materialistic aspect, I'm not just speaking about finances and money, okay? The ego is part of it as well, all right? I do have to accept, though, if we're going to be a medium working in the public, you've got to have a certain amount of ego, because you couldn't stand in front of an audience if you hadn't. We've got to accept that fact and acknowledge that. But Gordon Higginson said, we've got to be careful of the materialistic side of mediumship, because it's like a magnet that pulls us in and we don't realise it's happening. And I had to learn a lesson about that as well. I was driving to a church and I was stuck in the traffic jam. I was going to be late. And as I was there, I was talking to the spirit world, and so I was saying to them, you know, the last few demonstrations haven't been as good as they should have been. You know, you need to pull your socks up. And I heard this voice say to me, why are you doing this? What was your motive? What was your intent originally? And this is again where we have to be able to have this self-awareness and self-honesty and truth. I had to acknowledge I was no longer doing it for the right reason. I was going out to demonstrate, to prove how good Paul Jacobs could be. I acknowledged that. And at it was a church service, and that night every communication was somebody whose funeral had only taken place that week, or the funeral hadn't even taken place. because I'd gone back to the motive. I'd moved beyond the physical gratification of what I was doing and the true motive and intent. Not that I deliberately went that track.
Right.
Like you say, we have to be careful. It's like a magnet pulling us in. We don't realise it's happening. But look, and this is why there has to be this constant self-awareness all the time of ourselves. I've been doing this 30 odd years and I still have to have this self-awareness, or if I'm not being aware myself, have those who are good enough, kind enough and blunt enough and honest enough amongst my family and friends to tell me the truth and wake me up. Yeah. Okay. Even the times when I've really been ill, Helen, I did a demonstration last year somewhere, and I said to the person in charge, I said, I just don't know how I'm going to do this. I do not have an ounce of energy. I'm absolutely worn out. I'm shattered. And I sat on the platform. Something came into my consciousness. And again, to a question earlier, I didn't know if it was the spirit world or not. But I was too tired to fight, question, analyse, dissect. And the here goes. Well, I was like a machine gun.
Mm-hmm.
I had to actually stop several times. I was going that fast with the communication. I had to ask the audience to let me stop a moment to get my breath back.
Uh-huh.
Because again, what had I done? I'd stopped controlling. I surrendered and I trusted. And if I look at all the Dems or sittings that stand out top of the tree, they're always the ones where the motive, the intent, the trust, and the surrender has been there. Can you see that? Yeah. I've now answered your question. Okay. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Next one, Lillian.
All right, the next one is Sandra.
Okay. Do you want
Hi,
Peg?
Paul.
Oh, Sandra, got you, sir. Yeah.
Okay. At the course in February, you had mentioned that the eternal part of us is the soul,
Yeah.
and the aspects of the soul is emotion, higher mind, and spirit.
Yeah.
I had always thought that it was the spirit alone that was eternal. Can you just explain further?
Okay. Yes, in one way you are right. Okay, but we do say in our principles the eternal soul. So, where I believe, like the next stage of existence after the physical world is what we call the etheric world, which is a replica of the physical world. So when we leave this physical world behind, and we still have this shape and form of the physical body, but without the disease and aging. And as we progress in our expression of our spirit through our soul, we will then discard the etheric body and we'll move through a chain of lighter bodies until we have no shape or form. We're still soul, okay? But because we're still soul, we've still got individuality. So what we have to realise is the spirit isn't individual. It's the soul that gives it individuality.
Okay.
Once we have got to that ultimate expression of that divine power, that essence, that life force within us, that power of God, once we've got to the ultimate expression of that, then I believe, I can't prove it, then we discard the soul and the spirit goes back to the source, and then we lose individuality.
Okay.
The soul gives the spirit the individuality.
Okay. So no matter what, it's the spark.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. Thank you. For
Okay.
that.
Thank you.
Oh, that's clarified. Thank you. Good. Next one, Lillian. Lillian.
Sorry, Trevor.
Lillian.
Sorry.
Next question. Sorry?
Hi, Paul,
Trevor,
can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I've got you, Trevor. Yeah. Go.
Hi there, I just had a question. You know, when you're doing readings and when spirit comes through, but they come through a bit too strongly physically, and the problem I'd have is, you know, if they have like a heart attack and so on, I'd actually feel like an overly intense kind of feeling within the body. And despite even, you know, setting the intention before the reading commences, and even during it, and even after the reading, sometimes that kind of sensation lingers. Is that just a boundaries issue, or is that something else? Do you have any advice on that?
Yeah, don't forgive me for smiling. Yes, we can. I've experienced myself very much feeling and experiencing the condition of what the person's passed with. I've seen some mediums, where I say over dramatise it, but also those conditions can feel quite real. But once you've expressed it as evidence, then it should go. If it hasn't gone, then your mind is holding on to the experience.
Okay. Can I ask as well? I just always wondered this as well, that if the pain still lingers as well, I always wondered, like, oh, have I not gotten the exact piece of evidence that spirit wants me to get, and is that why they're making me feel the sensation again, because they want me to go back into it and to get something else, or no?
No, once if you've experienced physically that health condition, once you've expressed it, it should go. It's you holding on to it, and definitely if you're even after it's all over, you're still experiencing. You're holding on to it. There is another one answer to that question, slightly different, but I think it might be an experience that's worth sharing with you all. I can remember being at the Art in the college, and there was a group of students there who came together, who sat in a trance circle at home together, and they said, Paul, this week, if you've got some spare time, if we have much spare time, any chance that our circle could sit and you could give us your observation? So I said, yes, certainly, I'll see if I can find some time, we'll do that. And so we did. And towards the end of this circle, I was conscious of a gentleman from the spirit world who had been murdered, and I knew it had only been in the last 2 weeks, and he was recognised, and we finished the circle. But if you could imagine, he was murdered, it had only been 2 weeks ago, so you could imagine the intensity of the energy of that on all levels. So when the circle finished, I was still experiencing it all. So again, because self-awareness and experience, so other people may not have realised, they may have thought that person from the spirit world was still there, because it was like as if they were. But it wasn't, because it was such fresh and new experience and such a strong energy of events on all levels, it had left a strong imprint on my energy field. So all I had to do then was then to try and move my mind behind it. I just then moved myself into some group people with light conversation to move my mind from that imprint till it had gone down. Can you understand that? Does that make sense?
That was brilliant. Yeah, thanks very much.
Okay, I'll soon be fine then. So again, I don't really want to go, because there's been this thing over the last few years about attachments, I could have easily with that thought he was still attached to me and still communicating, and it's not true. Okay, they're not attached. It's just that they've left that strong imprint and impression on your auric field. Yeah, and it's back to the same with the health condition. Okay, your mind can be holding on to the experience, and also it's just left that little bit stronger imprint onto your energy field. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good. Okay. Next one. Sorry?
Ingun is next.
Who's next?
I've unmuted you. Ingun?
Hello.
Hi.
I'm not so good in English.
We'll manage.
Okay. Yes. Hello, Paul.
Hello, Ingrid.
When you have your contact with the loved ones, you have contact with others, spirit.
You mean lower
like
spirit?
Buddha, Jesus, or others on the other side. You have you have that.
You mean higher beings?
Yes, on the other side.
Like,
Oh, all right.
Not the lowest one, not family, but the higher. Yeah.
he's saying higher life beings like Jesus, like,
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Yes, and no. Okay. If you mean sort of like angels and archangels with wings, then no. Okay. What I could really do with telling you a couple of stories to answer this question if it doesn't take too long. All right. I was fortunate that the spirit people, not clairvoyantly, but actually took me through the journey of death and of dying. So that's why I teach death itself is not painful. Circumstances leading up to it may be for some, but death itself is not painful. And also it gave me the understanding, they actually took me through the actual experience of my own father's death, who passed in a car accident. And I was actually in the car and they took me through what it was like. And even and what they showed me was that the spirit moved out before the accident just before the accident took place. They then took me through the next stage of the funeral service, and this is why I believe that, and I can understand now why in some cultures they have the funeral services within 24 hours, because the spirit stays close and doesn't move on until we've said goodbye to the physical body. Okay. Then the experience was like many people have explained who've experienced the near-death experience. I was then took through the tunnel of light, and then I was just in this brilliant light, and as my senses adjusted, I could see my father standing there, and I heard a voice say to me, which I now believe was a higher being, a higher mind, say to me, "Come with us." And I said, "I don't want to come with you. I want to stay here with my father." And they says, "No, you cannot stay. We want you to come with us." And I said, "Well, can he come with us?" And they said, "No." And I said, "Why?" And they said, "Because he's not ready to move to where we want to take you to." So it was another level of consciousness. And this is why, not because I read it in a book, I've heard people mention it, but I teach it as a fact. They took me to this hall, which I know and believe as one of the halls of learning in the spirit world. And too long a story to tell you the full experience of it. But the experience was absolutely wonderful. I actually didn't want to come back. I'd have been quite happy to stay there within the spirit world. So those would have been higher minds, higher levels. So I was able to move to a higher level, even though I'm still living in this physical world, than some people are already in the spirit world. And that's why I teach to be able to grow in that expression of the spirit here and now in the way we express it and live it, not just wait until we get to the spirit world. But also, they gave me other experiences of taking me into other levels of consciousness in the spirit world, which I don't think you'd want to hear about, places I didn't want, I couldn't stand to be and couldn't wait to leave. They took me to a place that was very dark, empty and barren, because that's where the souls or level of consciousness, the souls reside, whose lives were empty, dark and barren. So if we all think it's going to be just pretty gardens with roses and cottages, then forget it. If that's what you've lived and earned and expressed while you've been here, then yes, certainly. Mind you, I don't think that would be my idea of heaven, but anyway. So, you know, you've got to realise the spirit world isn't a level of place, okay? And in a way, we're not people, we're individual. It's levels of consciousness and expression of a soul. And that's what these higher minds, are, if that's what you're speaking about. And even those, when we speak about guides, sometimes there's this question of, oh, my guide's better than your guide, or more unusual, or more important, you know. But, you know, all the guides are at different levels of experience and expression. And you've got to be careful about not becoming fixated with one particular guide. You'll find there's one that's there that is interested in you as a whole, but then there'll be others there that will be playing their parts in different levels of your growth and experience, and will change and be there for different purposes. So try not get fixated just on one particular guide. But if you want to speak about, we mentioned people like Jesus, and there was an experience I had as a young boy, and there's an experience at the college I had with a student. I'll speak to the one with the student first. I was asked to do a lecture on guides, angels, archangels, and masters. So I was saying in the talk that none of us have an archangel as a personal guide. And one lady put her hand up, quite upset and angry with me, and she says, "That's not true what you say. I have Archangel Raphael as my guide." I said, "I'm sorry, you don't." And she really got really upset with me. So I said to her, I said, "You're involved with healing work?" And she said, "Yes." I said, "Well, I do not deny you," because she says, "I've seen Archangel Raphael. Archangel Raphael comes to me." I said, "I do not deny you your vision, or that the vision is not real. What the spirit world is doing, they're giving you the vision of Archangel Raphael to tell you and let you know that you come under the influence of the power that Archangel represents." Now, my experience as a boy, now you've got to realise I was 13 years of age at the time. I was in the Catholic Church. Some of you might think I've lost my head with this, but that's okay. All right. And I was kneeling, praying, and above the altar there was the huge cross with Jesus' crucifixion. And as I watched the altar, and this was all an objective experience, not a subjective experience. As I looked at the altar, the priest disappeared. And in standing in the priest's place was myself. Even though I was sitting, kneeling in the pews, I could see myself standing on the altar. And then as I watched, Jesus came alive on the cross, came off the cross, stood behind me, and walked into me and started speaking. So at that time I thought, oh, is that God telling me I should be a priest? Then I thought, I'm just crazy, whatever. Okay. But later on, when I became in the understanding and came into spiritualism and started working with mediumship, what I realised now, okay, it was not me really experiencing the real Jesus or Jesus being my guide. It was the spirit world's way in my simple childhood, being brought up in the Catholic religion, of trying to maybe tell me then as a young boy, 13, that my work, my life in the future would be speaking with the voice of the Spirit. That makes sense to people? I think I've lost it. Okay, so, you know, and this is what we've got to understand. And, you know, even if we look at, you know, different teachings from different cultures, I can go along with a lot of the teaching behind the physical of the experience, you know. I've got a friend in Italy, he's a Catholic priest. He's been coming to courses with me now for 25 years. And he actually said to me, Paul, he said, if I hadn't become friends with you or known you, I wouldn't have carried on being a priest, because the last thing I wanted him to do was give his priesthood. But I could help him look at what he believed in, what we do, but also still be able to fit it in his understanding and parts of his understanding himself through the church. So, you know, and this is why I say, you know, if we look at, strip all teachings down and look behind them, and the base root of them, the basic teachings is there through all cultures and religions, you know, no one greater than this one. So it makes us mad when spiritualists think, you know, they're superior or greater knowledge than anybody else. We've got to, you know, that knowledge has been there. You have to forgive me for this. Have any of you read, what's his name? Dan Brown's books? The one I was reading, and I've used it in my addresses when I've taken a service, called The Lost Symbol. And I was really enjoying the book and couldn't wait to get to the end of it. This lost symbol that we're searching for, that was going to bring a great revelation that was going to change the world. And I couldn't wait to see what this revelation was going to be that was going to change the world. And at the end of the book, I was so disappointed because there was no new great revelation. And ladies and gentlemen, there's not one to come. As it said in the book, we've already had all the great revelations. Problem is, we've not listened. If we go back to Buddha, the temple of heaven is within. Go back to Jesus. My Father and I are one. Ladies and gentlemen, what else do we need? What other philosophy do we need? What other teachings do we need? Nothing. If we could find the reality of those two simple things, we'd have everything we need in this world. Simple as that. I believe very much in the simplicity to all things. Sorry if I've gone on a little bit from that question. Anyway, okay, another one, Lillian.
All right. So Andrea asked, do you connect with animals?
Okay, this is a biggie. All right. So I am aware of animals sometimes and give communication of somebody's animal, whether it's their horse, whether it's their dog. Okay. But I believe the information that comes about that animal, I don't believe personally the animal is giving it me direct. I believe that there is a person there that is bringing the knowledge and the understanding. I believe the spirit of the dog is there, but I'm not actually giving the communication itself from the dog. Okay, I believe there's something there bringing that information, but I do believe the spirit of the dog survives and is there. So don't believe that pets can't, and the pets we love can't be brought from our family in the spirit world. I do believe that, and I know some people need that more than other people do. A human being. Oh, was that a sign?
Sorry, that was my dog. That was weird.
Wasn't it? Just at the right moment. I can remember.
It scared me.
I can remember a few.
Talk about affirmation.
A couple of years ago, I was went to a lady. It was the last contact, and I saw 4 different dogs. I got the name. Please, I can't do this all the time. I'm not that good. But I had the name of every dog, and I kept saying person. And I said, you know, I've given you these animals you recognise. You've said the names are correct. I said, but unfortunately, I can't give you any evidence for a person from the spirit world. She said, I don't want a person from the spirit world. There's nobody in the spirit world I want. I only want my animals. So who am I to deny the spirit world the opportunity to bring that reassurance that love's known still for her animals and that they could be given that acknowledgement? I hope that answers your question. Okay, not everybody. I know not all of you might agree with me on my answer, and that's okay. I accept that.
I know, that was so funny, the dog. Okay, the next one was Orlando Melendez. He had to go, but I'm going to message him. He was asking if you suggest any books that help with development.
That's a tricky one. Okay. You probably wouldn't like my answer if I give you the answer the Spirit will told me in the beginning. They actually advised me not to read any books. They actually said, we want you to learn from experience. And if you buy books, it is being put in on the subject of mediumship, they'll be putting preconceived ideas into your mind. Then again, like somebody was asking earlier, is it my own mind or have I really experienced that? Yeah. So yes, there's some interesting books if you want to read. I read very little, to be honest with you. In 35 years, I think the first time I found a spiritualist church, I picked up Leslie Flint's Voices in the Dark, the physical medium, voice medium. I keep next to my bed, like a little bit like a Bible, I keep Andrew Jackson Davis's Millennium, a philosopher. It's not a book, it's in Old English, so it's not a book you can read page to page, but I find it a source of inspiration. Sometimes if I'm search for maybe some new inspiration to do an address in a church, I'll open it at random and find a passage. So I'm not really one that's over mad on reading books, to be honest with you. I'm not saying it's wrong to. It's good to look at different philosophies as well. But I think there's very little on mediumship, really. I mean, forgive me, I'm not promoting it because you'll have a job to buy it anyway, because I don't take it anywhere to sell with my own book. It's a book about myself, but it's about my journey and understanding of mediumship, and I give maybe examples from my work that's giving me an understanding to get a teaching across the medium. But I think in the early, we've got to be careful how much we take on. And again, if you look, even in the practical health mediumship books, they're all rigid techniques and structures. And what we've got to be careful of today, and I've been just as bad as anybody else, okay, as a teacher, but I've changed, because we should all be moving and changing all the time. Technique and structures are important, but what we've done, particularly over the last 25 years, we've taken away the naturalness. So I'm trying to put naturalness first, technique and structure second. Particularly with demonstrating technique and a structure does need to be used, but it can't come before the naturalness. That's why I said earlier, I say to the spirit world, I trust, I surrender, bring me whatever you want to bring, in whatever way I can receive it, and then depending what I've received, how I've received it, then we'll decide what technique and structure I put into place. But I've done the naturalness first. I mean, a lot of people, there's a lot of teachings now where they're actually teaching you what order you've got to give the information, and even what information you've got to give. And, and I've even looked at some courses, some by individuals, some by organisations. When they assess you, they've got this form and these boxes they tick. Well, did they give that evidence? Did they give that? And if you haven't ticked the boxes, I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, it's no wonder mediumship isn't maybe sometimes what it should be. Who are we to control what's brought as evidence?
So Paul, can you
Who
hear
are
me?
we to decide how we should receive it?
Can you hear me?
Who's speaking? Say your
This
name.
is
Orlando's still here.
Okay, all right. Yeah?
So basically, I totally agree with you in terms of the books and everything that you're saying. My question lies more around, I feel that I have something. I feel that somebody's trying to tell me something and move me in a certain direction. But like the person said on the other question, I want to be able to mentally just or somehow prepare myself better. And how do I do that? And what is the avenue to do that? I mean, You know, I got some books that, like your book even, you know, that I just found out about on this chat, but I'm just trying to understand what would be the best way to look at myself and try to be able to receive that spirit and prepare myself better. Does that make sense? Like, how do you start from zero to just even being able to see that? Because there are times and moments and times that I suppress it and I'm like, no, 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 I'm not ready to do this. But I feel messages from my, you know, my father just passed away 2, 3 days ago, and it's already like stuff coming to me, you know. So my mother passed away 13 years ago. My brother passed away 8 years ago, and I'm able to the help of other mediums that invited me to this to communicate with them. But there are times that I myself am able to, you know, when my mind is clear and everything, I'm able to speak to them and see them and talk to them. But and then I get afraid and I just want to suppress it. So I just want to be able to understand what is the best way, you know, to accept it and nurture it. You know what I mean?
Oh, right. So,
I know that's a loaded question, but that's what's on my mind. You know.
there's quite a few things. So, sorry to hear of your recent bereavement, but this seems a bit hard to say to you, particularly as your father's recently passed. We've got to realise developing mediumship isn't for our own personal use of communication with our own.
No, of course.
First of all, we've got to realise that. Yes, if I might sit and talk to my family in the spirit world, but I don't expect to be conscious of them in my through my own mediumship. If I ever am conscious of my own people, it's when I'm not consciously trying to. Then it's more acceptable of being genuine in that I've not sort of created it or myself because I've desired or wanted it. My way is very simple, and it may not seem helpful answer to you, but you know, there's 3 simple points we have to do. Okay, one is to spend time dwelling within your own soul. Okay, and really understanding, knowing your own soul and you in all your glory, in all your own makeup as a person and individual, in what you've lived, what you express, in the positive and the good, the qualities that are there with you. But more than anything, I wrote the words, it's on my website, every true medium has to touch that God point at least once. So I believe it's not about going up and out there to the spirit world, to the heavens. It's about going within your own soul and touching that God particle, that God point, and bring an awakening of that God power that's within, but a reality within you, not just when you want to sit for mediumship, right? But in a way, then having a relationship with that power that's within, a trust within that power that's within. And that was, Gordon Higginson was the most amazing medium of the last 100 years. He had every mediumistic gift that was possible. And that was his simple philosophy. And he said, I listened to an old radio interview last year. So he's been gone 26 years physically. And this interview must have already been about 20 years old. And in the interviewer's first question to him was, are the mediums today as good as the ones in the past? And Gordon's response was, no, they're not. And if you ask me the same question now, I would give the same answer. And I include myself in that, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm putting myself separate because I'm not. And the question, so the interviewer said, why? And Gordon Higginson said, it's not because there's not the potential. There are many young people out there in the world today that have got the potential to have that quality, but they are not taught right or trained properly. In the beginning, in the early years with Gordon, you would have to do an awareness course first, even at the college. You was always advised to do an awareness course first. Gordon believed in the self-awareness and the awakening and the relationship of this power of God within him, and it becoming a reality. He very much believed that is the cornerstone and foundation to any spiritual gifts anybody has. But to do that is not easy. That is the foundation to it all. It's no good in lip service. It's no good without conscious mind. Just on a slightly different note, which I've had to say to one or two people, I've said your mediumship won't come into its full power because you may accept and acknowledge in your mind that you're a medium, but you have not accepted and acknowledged your mediumship from your soul. So until you have that self-acknowledgement and conviction within your own soul, yeah. Good. I always said, I remember, I used to have all these messages being telling me, one day you'll be up here doing this, you'll be a medium. I thought they were all crazy. I thought they needed the men in the white coats to come take them away. So I thought I'd go to Stansted after in college, prove them wrong. Unfortunately, I found another story. But even after that, even a few years after that, even though I was doing the journey of developing mediumship, I still couldn't accept I was a medium. Even though I could give people evidence for contact, I still was trying to find another explanation. And after several years, Gordon Higginson, over a cup of tea one day at his sister's home, said to me, in a quite strong way, and not a very pleasant way, he said, Paul, he says, I do not understand you. And I said, why? What's wrong? Why don't you do something more about your mediumship? And I hadn't, because I always said I would never believe and accept I was a medium until I heard it from his mouth. And that was the closest I got. And from there, then, I really began my journey in my development. So it is the cornerstone, because if you think, no teacher can put the mediumistic ability there for you. It's either there or it's not. I say to my students, I never teach my students, I never tell them what they've got to get as evidence. I said, that's between you and the spirit world. I can't put it there. They know what you're capable of receiving. They know what they want to bring. Not me. All I can do is to help you to understand it and use it and present it in the best possible way to its full potential. The rest is between you, God, and the Spirit. It's as simple as that. It really is. So I don't know if that's helpful enough to you, but that's the closest I can come. And, I'm going to say this, and this might be detrimental to myself, to other teachers as well, but I'm very much putting myself on the top of the list with it as well. I actually wonder whether we're actually all trying, in all these classes and courses, teach you too much. You say Gordon Higginson taught us. He did, or he didn't. He would never tell us how to do anything.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
He only told us what he wanted us to do, and we had to find the answer for ourselves. And the only way we could find that answer was by going within our soul and touching an awakening and going to God. Why go to a guide? Why go to a soldier? Why not go to the chief commander? Go straight to God. Yeah. Some of you who know me, who've done courses with me, there's others not. Forgive me, you may have heard this story, and I still think it's one of the most important ones. I said I went to the Arthur Findlay College for the first time to prove I wasn't a medium. It was the introductory evening, the first evening. Gordon Higginson said, we're not going to have the normal introduction, we're going to commence work straight away. Can I have a volunteer to come out and work? There's 80, 90 students there. Nobody volunteered. And Gordon Higginson said, you are all a waste of time. I don't know why you bothered coming, why you bothered spending your money. Paul, out you come. So out you come. Now, if you think, I didn't know whether I was a medium or not, only through the messages from the platform. I'd never been to a class. I'd never been to a circle. So I stood on the platform and he says, Paul, I want you to make a contact with the spirit world. I said, I don't know how to do it. He said, simply ask who's there. I says, I don't know how to. He said, ask. Without being told, I didn't, and this is why I teach what I teach, I didn't ask in words in my head. I went down to the depths of my soul and cried out, God, help, give me what this man wants. And in my mind, I heard the words Father. And as the other Anna asked earlier, I didn't know whether the spirit world would give it me or not. And again, I wasn't bothered whether it was right or wrong because I'd gone to prove I wasn't a medium. So I was quite happy for it to be wrong. So I said, it's somebody's father. He then said to me, who does he want to speak to? I said, I don't know. Ask and allow their power to move you to who they wish to speak to. So again, I went to the depths of my soul, cried out to God, help, who does he want to speak to? And I looked out at the audience, one young blonde lady stood out, and I said to Gordon, the lady there. And she said, yes, my father's in the spirit world. And then Gordon said, and what does he want to say? He didn't say to me, tell me how he died, tell me his physical description, tell me his personality and character. What does he want to say? I went back into the depths of my soul. What do you want to say? And the words came into my mind. I've only just died and I've left her £500,000 in my will. I expressed it and she said, yes. As simple as that. Not one technique, not one lesson, not one instruction on what I had to do, but ask. But he didn't even tell me how I had to ask. See, we've been bad as teachers in the past because we've said to you, speak to the spirit world, ask them this, ask them the other, but we've never told you how. But you should have really found that out yourself. Because if you ask by awakening and touching God, then that contact and communication will happen and take place and they will bring forth. As simple as that. I'm going to put myself out of a job now. Forget doing any more courses, forget doing any more classes. Make all the teachers redundant, and me included. As simple as that. If you think, I say to some of my students regularly, if you'd have been taught in the beginning to awaken, go into the depths of your soul, awaken that God part, and ask through that God part of you within to the Spirit, who's there, who they want to speak to, what they want to say. What more do you need? Nothing. It's as simple as that, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry about that, got on my soapbox a bit. But if you want the truth of it from me, that's me. Okay, Orlando, hope that's helped you, mate. Yeah, good. You there, Lillian?
I'm here.
Okay.
Thank you, Orlando. All right. So then Janice asked, when sitting in the power, how do we know we are in the power and we're not losing connection? How do we know we're in the right place?
Okay. So that of the spirit's difficult to measure in physical terms. Okay. You don't want to know while you're doing it, because if you wanted to know while you're doing it, you're not doing it. Okay. So there's several things. One, as I said earlier, if you're truly within that power and that change of consciousness, then you lose consciousness of time. So, you know, a minute, an hour will only be like a minute. So that will be one sign. Two, you'll find violet is the colour of the spiritual power, is the colour of spiritual power. And you'll find that colour should start to manifest, but it won't be a flat, still colour. It'll like have a heartbeat to it. It'll be like clouds that will billow in and out, that will move you and draw you deeper within. And you should be able to then, once you're really in that change of consciousness, even though it's difficult, you should be able to move your mind and awareness beyond any physical distractions. And then the only other thing I can say, the feeling is something that you cannot put into words. It's as simple as that. But I can't describe my feelings to you. I can't put it into words, but your feelings will be different. So we don't want you to be conscious. If you're moving your body, moving your hands, touching your face, moving your head, allowing outside noises to distract you, you're not achieving the state or in the state that we want you or need you to be in and to reach. So to reach it, it's not something easy. It's not something you're going to do in one session. And this is why I said it took me roughly, I suppose, 12 months to be able to achieve that state by doing it every day on my own and once a week in a group. So, you know, doesn't mean that's the set time limit. Some of you might achieve it sooner, some may take longer, but it's something we've got to perceive to do. But then you will find, you know, I don't do it all the time on a regular basis now, because I can do it more in a natural way, not in the formal sense of having to do it. Still doing me good to do it in the formal sense as well. That's the nearest I can answer you, if that's helpful to you.
Beautiful. All right, and we have Vivian.
Vivian? What page is Vivian on? Ah, yeah, I've got you, Vivian. Yep.
Hi, Paul.
Hi, Vivian.
How are you?
I'm very good, thank you.
You must be exhausted.
Honestly, even just doing this, even though if you think, I come alive.
I know.
This party, you know, because when I'm working, I'm talking with the spirit, I'm using my own soul and power. I'm not necessarily in touch, being inspired by the spirit world, but from my own spirit and my own power, it then invigorates me and it gives me a strength. It's like when if I've done, you know, we've been working with healing, when I've been doing demonstration, if in both cases I've really been in that power, I can go and party afterwards, because don't forget,
I know.
a residue of power, a residue has been left behind. So, you know, I'll be careful of healers if after they've given you healing, they're worn out and they're tired, because they're giving you life energies, they're not connecting and allowing that power to flow through you. Sorry, carry on. That's your question.
All right. So basically, you know how we talk about spirit attachments, and we talk about earthbound spirits. Now, my mentor had, every time I asked, had basically told me, no, don't believe in them, and I'm not going to address it. But I am curious, because I feel like in order for us to know exactly how we work and exactly how everything works, it's kind of part of the parcel, and it's part of the knowing. Whether it's true or it isn't, it's just part of the knowing. Does that make sense? Yeah. I need to just, I suppose, sometimes understand a little bit more about it and about how we as spiritualists feel about it.
Okay, yeah. So, because there was a lot of disagreements on this and discussions, I actually brought, when I was representative to all the tutors at the college, the College Committee, brought them all together, and I says, come on, we need to be all singing from the same song sheets, you know. So we had these working parties to put a consensus together on all these subjects. You know, firstly, I'm not saying you have. I understand you wanting to ask the question, but there are some people whose minds are constantly focused on the negativity of what could be, and I actually say to them, if that's the type of mind you got, where you are focusing more on the negativity aspects of what could be and happen, I would actually leave mediumship alone, because you'll create your actual own reality of it. All right. You know, I think, you know, one of the new ones is what we call, I've heard the last few years, is walk-ins. You know, come on. Your body is the temple of your spirit, nobody else. Earlier on, I said there's a divine natural law that nothing and nobody break. All right. And, you know, yes, there are those people in the spirit world who want to stay close to the earthly vibrations as possible, because the physical things of this world or pleasures or that meant so much to them, they still want to close and experience those things. Yeah. So I believe very much in like attracts like. All right. What makes me smile sometimes, okay, is the ones who really sort of put out there and teach all this negativity. They're the first ones also to claim they've got Archangel so-and-so as their personal guides.
Yeah.
So they're saying then darkness penetrates light. It's not true. Light penetrates darkness, you know. You know, you all believe in these helpers, these guides. I said there is that one that is interested in you as a whole, who will be a more evolved a soul, okay, than you and me. So you're saying then somebody who's passed from the earth of recent years, who wants to be close to the earth, is more powerful than those more evolved souls and can control you more than them. It contradicts.
It does contradict, and I have, it does.
You know what we've got to realise also, and I can understand, okay, is I can remember when the reawakening of my mediumship started. I'd moved into some old premises, some offices which were old terraced houses, to my work premises, and I started having very strong objective experiences of the spirit world. I couldn't say it was the spirit world. I didn't know what was happening. I scared the living daylights out of me. I actually was that frightened. I got up in the middle of the night and booked myself in a hotel. So I was pretty down to, because of maybe the Catholic upbringing, the horror movies and films and whatever, I thought it was evil spirits trying to get me. Okay. So when we have experiences we don't understand, it's a natural human instinct to jump to something negative or something fearful. Yeah. What I realise now, because it was through those experiences that then pushed me to go into a spiritualist church. So what I realise now, those experiences weren't nothing negative. It was me not understanding them and my fear turning them into something negative. It was the spirit world telling me it was time and giving me that push to do something about my journey, because it was time. But because I didn't understand them, my mind jumped and created and turned into something negative. And it wasn't.
I get that. Yeah, I get that totally.
So, most of this negativity is simply by fear, to be honest with you. But then there's also, we have to accept, there's a lot of people who are making a lot of money out there writing books and videos on the fear and the negativity of it, you know.
I think that's the problem, isn't it? Is that even though we know what we know, and I've worked for many years in this business as such, if you want to call it business, but it's not, it's a vocation. And I've worked for many years. And I just feel that I keep getting these questions from people about all of this. And it's
But
almost as though I don't know what answers to give them, because
you
I'm
can
looking on the
prove,
positivity
Vivian.
of it all.
Vivian, you've agreed with me. You've accepted what I've just said. You could disagree, but you seem to go along with it. You tell people the truth. I'll be honest with you, I'm not always liked or not popular, whether it's amongst other teachers, whether it's through other students or whatever, because I speak my truth as I see it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll be honest with you, and forgive me, those of you who do trans. I used to run trans weeks at Stansted Hall many years ago, before all those who run them today. I stopped doing it after 3 years. It attracted more people who were than any other courses, who was not totally imbalanced than any other subject, to be true, if I'm going to be honest and truthful, okay? And even then, some of the students there that would tell me things, but I would have to give them my truth, but they didn't want to accept, because they created their own reality of this fear and this negativity. And I know this is slightly going off a little bit, but we've got this trans week, and I was in the sanctuary taking my group, and there was this one lady who was going to be in my group, and I knew there was going to be difficulties before we started. So I thought, I'm going to have to deal with it straight away in the first session. So I was sitting in the sanctuary waiting for my group to come, and we all sat there. And I said, I'm not going to have an introduction session. We're going to start work straight away. I believe there's one or two of you already quite experienced speaking in the trans state. And I wonder if one of you would like to volunteer, you and your people in the spirit world work for us. And I knew this lady's hand would go straight up, and it did. So I invited her out, and she came out to work, and she sat there, and I'm not exaggerating, where she put her body into all this deformed position.
Yeah, I've seen
started speaking in words that you couldn't make out. So I let it carry on for a little while. Then I said, well, what I did, because I knew she wasn't in trance at all, okay, it was all her own mind creating this. So, but I pretended I was speaking to the guide. So, excuse me for interrupting. I said, but do you realise that you're distorting your medium to such a degree that you're frightening people? And also, we cannot make a word out that you're saying. So unless you can learn to control your medium in a better way, we will not be able to give you another opportunity this week to speak. And she came out of it fairly quickly. She couldn't say anything to me, and she stayed in her bedroom for the rest of the week, pretending she was ill. Her husband was in the group, and actually he had a wonderful potential for transmedium, but he'd just come there to support his wife, who was doing all this, and
I've
and
seen all that. I've seen it. Yeah, I've seen it.
But the trouble is, I don't believe enough of us prepare to stand up and speak the truth. There's so many people who represent us in this from all in any country, and particularly when it's their full-time job and they want people to like them and they want to be popular. I don't believe enough of us stand up and speak and stand up for what's right. No, I do. It doesn't make me popular always with everybody.
Yeah, but you have to say what you know to be true.
Yeah, okay.
You have to.
Also, then what we've got to realise is we have to be careful of, and also myself, also a little knowledge can do more harm than good as well. That's another problem we have,
It's just a hard one when you keep getting messages and you keep getting asked the same questions over and over and over again, and you want to be able to give some sort of answer, but I feel like I'm not in the knowledge of it, because everything that I do is from that lovely, beautiful place, and
I understand. It's like every question that's been asked tonight, I've already answered many times in the past.
Yeah.
It's part of it, Vivian. You have to.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes you would just wish people wouldn't keep dwelling on this negativity, but you've got to stand in the truth of it. But let's keep a sensibility and an intelligence. what we're saying and what we're teaching. You know.
Yeah, well, it's worked for me for all these years, so I'm happy.
That's
Thank
good.
you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, we're on 8 o'clock. Lillian, is there anybody else?
Yep. We just had Becky.
Who?
Becky.
Becky. Okay. What page is Becky on?
Becky, are you still here?
I'm here.
Yes. Hi, Becky.
Hi.
You'll be our last question today.
Oh, thank you. I was in one of your classes, and my question was how you work with your spirit people and with your students.
Okay.
I had an incident, that's all.
Okay, it varies, Becky. The problem I find, the more the beginner a person, okay,
okay,
the more you need to, in a way, link in and tune in with them.
Okay.
Okay, I find with my experience, with the more experienced ones, just my knowledge and my own sentiment and awareness, I can follow what they're doing and not doing. I will link if I have to. In the past, I always used to, when even the paired exercises, I would go around and listen to people and what they were doing. But I find majority of students, if I do that, so I've stopped doing it so much now, they clam up because I'm listening to what they're saying and they all clam up. So sometimes I have to just sit there, but you know, I have to because you won't let me come and listen. So what you're doing, you know. But I do find in the beginning, for the beginners, I really need to sort of like, so I'm helping them build a contact, and I can become aware of the communicator myself who's there. And then sort of guide them, know when their own mind's coming in, or know when they've got something which I can know they can work with. Yeah.
Okay. That makes a whole lot more sense.
Okay, I think that's good. Thank you. Anybody else? I'm okay. If anybody wants.
Thank you.
Okay, good. I can stay a bit longer if anybody wants. If there is anything, if you need to leave the group because we've had our 2 hours, I understand. If you've had enough of me, that's fine too.
I think that was all the questions we have. I think it was one last one. Triona was asking about trance.
Yeah. Okay.
Are you here, Triona? Oh, she's offline.
Okay.
She left
Right.
already.
Is anybody else then? Fiona's gone. No, you've all had enough.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Mwah, mwah. You're great.
Thank you, everybody, and I hope you enjoyed time with Paul. Paul is doing online classes now. And I don't know if you wanted to talk about them, but he does have a self-awareness workshop coming up, Colors of the Soul, coming up here in April, and taking the platform in August. And also, Paul, you want to tell them what you're working on now?
Okay, all right. So next year we are going to be doing a regular progressive mentorship group, which will be every month, plus halfway through where we come together as well physically halfway. So then we can. You know, I thought it was good to meet rather than at the end, meet in the middle, so I can, you know, also experience you physically to really make sure you're all on track before we do the second half of the course. But that'll all be coming out soon anyway. But what I want to say to you all tonight, you know, you've got to realise, you know, it's your right to accept or not accept some of my answers. I can only give you from my experience without sounding conceited. I have a lot of experience, and I've been fortunate. I came into an era of what I call the end of an era of some really great mediums. You know, and I think one of my problems today is that, like, you know, my old journey was with Gordon from the beginning, who was the finest healer. He took me healing with him. I sat in his physical circles. He did trance in my own home. I've experienced the best. He used to, I can remember even at the Arthur Findlay College, he had every top trance medium there to do a demonstration. And I had to go in and listen to every one and then afterwards go to his private room and give an assessment on everyone, and they were big names. He didn't tell me I had to assess. He wanted to know whether I could assess. All right. So, you know, I believe in simplicity. I believe in keeping our feet firmly on the ground. Okay. You know, there's only you who knows what's in your soul, your desire. If you do truly have that desire and it is done from the soul of your being, your intent is right, and you can awaken that relationship with that power, with your God, then you've got the foundations for it all to happen. It's as simple as that, ladies and gentlemen. So I do appreciate you joining. I've enjoyed sharing with you. A great big thanks to Lillian, because I just couldn't do this with anything like this without Lillian. So I'm absolutely hopelessly, I'm a dinosaur with this sort of thing. So thanks, Lillian. That's been great. And I wish you all well on your journey. On Facebook, yeah, that limit which is full. But most things on my Facebook are put on the page, so you can always have a look on the page as well if you want to see what I'm doing or not doing. Or occasionally I do get some of you ask me questions. I try to answer if I can, not always immediately. It just depends where I am and what I'm doing at the time. You know, sometimes I am available and try to be.
Oh, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Do you do private sittings online by any chance?
I have done some. I'll be honest with you, I don't do them very unless I know it's something to use in unless they really in need. I'm going to be honest with you. I'll be honest with you. I could fill out for the next 12 months of people wanting spiritual assessments.
Yeah.
And the trouble is, I found once or two people came to me asking for them, and you know, sometimes. Again, I sometimes think you all want these as spiritual assessments too much.
I've never had one, so.
I'll be honest with you, I never had one either. Even though I was friends with Gordon Higginson, he wouldn't give me one. And I can remember doing a course where you were all guaranteed an assessment. He was giving all 80 students an assessment. He gave everybody an assessment except for me. Then, because I lived down the road from him, so we'd meet up quite often for lunch. And after say, oh, Paul, I've got to disappear. I've got this medium coming to see me for a sitting. And he'd have all the big names mediums coming for these sittings. So this one particular lunchtime, I said, Gordon, can I ask you something? And he says, yes. I said, you'll never give me a sitting. You never give me a sitting, or you've never given me an assessment. Is there any particular reason? I said, it's not a problem. It doesn't matter. I'm not asking for one. I just wondered if there's a reason. And he says, well, firstly, he says, every time I meet you, don't you think I have a look to see if you're okay? And if there was something you needed to know, I would tell you. I said, yes, I accept that. He says, secondly, I'm always going to be here. And I want you to be strong enough to be able to stand on your own 2 feet.
Mm.
You see, and then I'll be honest with you, even in college where I sometimes have to do them, I don't always like doing them because people come for them, and to be honest with you, I'm not saying you personally or any of you, they don't want the truth.
Yeah.
They only want to be told they're going to be the next thing in sliced bread, and if you don't tell them that, the reading's been.
Okay, thanks, Paul.
You know, I'm not saying I don't do them, you know, I'm a top limited. I might, because we locked in, I might put it out there, I might do some.
That's what I was thinking.
So send me a private message, and if I decide to do some, then I'll let you know. Okay?
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you.
All right, okay.
Paul has posted all of the courses to come on his page. So if you're interested, you can go on his page and check it out. You can message me. I can provide the information as well. Again, we have 3 online courses, and he will launch his progressive when he feels he's got it all together. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I never get tired of listening to Paul. Thank you, Paul, so much for your time. You didn't have to do this, but you love what you do, and that's why I love how you do it. Thank you so much.
I'm happy to do another one in a few weeks.
You should do it once a month. We should do it once a month if you're
All
ready.
right. Okay. All right. Take care. Wish you
Thank
well, Mike.
Bye, everybody.
All right. Bye,
Bye.
everyone. Okay.